Welcome to the postgame show here on Mizzou on SI. Missouri Tigers get a win over Buffalo 38-0. Their second straight shutout to open the season here. First time they've got two straight shutouts since 1935. They played a teachers college for the last time they got that second straight shutout, and William Jewell the week before in that 1935 season. So overall strong showing from the defense all four quarters. Offense kind of wobbled a little bit in the first quarter and then eventually found their footing to put together a 21-point second quarter and then 7 points in both the third and fourth quarter. Overall, a lot to like about this Missouri Tigers performance. Some things they'll have to clean up. They have a really tough Boston College team coming to town next week. So we're here to talk about it all. I'm Joey Van Summer, one of our football reporters here, and I'm joined by Michael. How are we doing in the press box another late night?
Not as late as last week,
Yeah.
so I guess that's nice. But yeah, this was still nowhere near perfect. It's early in the season. It's Buffalo. It's a MAC team, so they got some better looks. Buffalo's offense is a little bit better. Buffalo's defense threw some wrenches at them. Obviously, Brady Cook threw an interception. I don't know how much of that was not a good throw compared to Buffalo's defense, but still not really pressure any quarterback or any pressure on Cook on the quarterback. They tried to shut down the run, but Noel and Carroll still really did their thing, and obviously Theo Weiss did his thing
Yeah.
as well in the air. So nothing really surprising again.
Yeah.
We're keeping an eye on Luther Burden. Seems like he was sick all week. He didn't get much action. I don't think anyone's super concerned about that, but still something to keep an eye on. And then, like Joey said, the defense was lights out, another shutout, and it didn't seem like they really did anything
Yeah.
too crazy. It was a pretty simple defensive performance. Nothing really new scheme or formation wise. This is what a lot of what we saw last year. Now with Corey Batoon. So personally, for me, I always like seeing a team put pressure on the quarterback. So I was pleasantly surprised to see Zion Young, Chris McClellan, Ja'Kai Lang got in on the action, which was fun to see. So it was nice to see him put some pressure on the quarterback. But yeah, obviously strong defensive showing. Maybe a little not much to be desired with the offense, but that's gonna improve as we move along.
With the defense, they really just won a lot in the trenches, like you mentioned, put a lot of pressure on CJ Agbana, the Buffalo quarterback, but in the trenches as well, really shut down the run game. I think on the first two drives for Buffalo, they tried a few runs and they were instantly met at the line. Chris McClellan, the Florida defensive tackle, really helped out in those efforts. I was also really impressed with Corey Flagg for the second straight week in a row. I think Mizzou has a real player on the defensive side of the ball. He's maybe not as the fastest linebacker, but he certainly covers a lot of ground quickly. We saw him, he had that really impressive tackle for loss in the second quarter there. Um, so the defense seems really strong on all three levels, seems really deep on all three levels. We talked about earlier in the week the depth they have at defensive tackle. They're 60th there. We saw so many guys at edge tonight make some plays. Even Joe Morgan involved with the fun. Johnny Walker had his first sack of the season. And then in the secondary, obviously, you have your three corners, Norwood, Pride, and Deloach. But then the safety back room, really, they can just use each of those guys to their own best skill set. So defense looks really strong for a unit that was the main question mark, at least on the outside going in for Missouri this year. You're losing your top defensive coordinator and bringing in unproven guy in the SEC at least. And so obviously they have yet to face a real tough challenge on offense. They'll get a little step up next week with Boston College again, but another good strong performance from the defense, like you mentioned, Michael. Offensively, I mean, let's talk a little bit about the start of the game there. The first quarter was really, I don't want to say concerning. That seems like a little overdoing it, but it was a pretty bad performance for Missouri, especially in contrast to how their defense was doing to go against Buffalo, to get an interception from Marvin Burks on that to start the second drive there, not make anything of it, to have to settle for two long field goals on the first two drives. And Blake Craig goes 1 for 2 on those. The same problems coming up on third down. It just seemed like I mean, one, it seemed like the playbook was a little limited. Then it just seemed like they were running a lot of short curl routes and just trying to get the ball in the hands of either Luther Burden or another one of these playmakers and just see what they could do with it instead of playing in a rhythm and having really well-designed plays that were able to get them first down. So a little bit of a struggle fest there, but then eventually, like I said, and obviously find their way. Michael, what did you make of those first two drives and then how the offense rebounded?
Uh, One fascinating thing that I kind of go back to that, I mean, Drinkwitz, Theo Weiss, and Brady Cook hit on in the post-game press conferences is the amount of space they were giving
Yeah,
some of these receivers. And I mentioned, I think early on in the game that it was just a whole bunch of quick hitters to the outside, whether that was with Weiss or Burden or whoever they were targeting. Mookie Cooper got in on the fun a little bit. And not a lot in the middle of the field. I don't know how much of that was just due to that's what they're comfortable with, and they want to get those guys, like you said, the ball, in more space. I know off the top of my head, Marquise Johnson caught a couple balls in the middle of the field, which was kind of a nice switch up for that. But yeah, I mean, they were really sagging off on the outside towards the end of the field or the sidelines with guys like Weiss, which really allowed him to get a lot of his receptions. He didn't do anything crazy, really. I mean, he had I shouldn't say that. I guess he had a couple plays, couple catches where after the catch he really excelled. He also mentioned that he was frustrated that he didn't get into the end zone, which was funny, and I feel like that's understandable. But he didn't, as far as some of those other receptions, he didn't do anything crazy. They were just quick routes to the outside, and he was open. The fact that they were, the Buffalo defensive backs were letting them have those was interesting. Outside of that, the running game I think kind of went a little underrated. It sounds
yeah.
like Carroll and Noel both did their jobs on not a ton of carries. Obviously, Brady Cook's going to be the one we talk about in the running game. His 30 whatever yard run was quite a highlight for his highlight reel. He mentioned that he high stepped that defensive end like Luther Burden, which was funny. And it sounds like it was not necessarily a busted play, but wasn't what was supposed to happen. It was supposed to be a something involving Tyler Stevens, and Stevens kind of got caught up on the offensive line, kind of blocking and got stuck. Cook mentioned that he kind of took Stevens' spot and he took off, obviously, back flipped or front flipped into the end zone, which had a couple of us on the edge of our seat. Maybe not the smartest play, but Noel had the block on that as well, which was quite impressive. So, and Cook had another rushing touchdown as well. So he looked really good on his feet, and not that he's never not, but it was nice to see that. And Carroll and Noel looked solid as well. Kind of like what we expected. They really complement each other well, and both pick up some nice chunk runs and things like that. So was it the most desired outcome from the offense? No, but they really did a good job on the ground. The penalties
Yeah.
weren't ideal. How much of that is just it being early in the season compared to this is really an issue? I guess we'll see against Boston College next week because that's when it's going to be more of a pressing issue. So I don't think anyone's super concerned about that. I personally think it's just early season stuff. So
Yeah, they had 10 penalties that cost them 80 yards tonight. I believe they had around 79 yards last week. So a lot of that has to be cleaned up. A lot of it is on the offensive line. I know Mitchell Walters was called for a holding. Cameron Johnson, who was not playing, Mitchell Walters was taken filling in for him tonight. Cameron Johnson is always good for a false start or a holding as well. So
I think Caden Green.
that's true. He had a holding.
Caden Green had one as well. Everyone was getting in on the fun.
Yeah, exactly. So they're gonna have to clean this up. I think you did at least see from the offense the ability to they had their struggles in the first quarter, but didn't get stagnant, got more creative, and then in the second quarter, once Burton scored that touchdown, they were all rolling from there. Like you said, Cook had a nice performance. Still not connecting on deep balls. Again, not something I would be concerned with. That it's not gonna happen not gonna connect in sometime in the next few weeks. Obviously, it's got to be sooner rather than later. But again, it's not like we've never seen Brady Cook connect on a deep ball. We saw plenty last year, and I have no doubt that I'll be able to get it fixed in the coming weeks. Two more things before we wrap up. Standout performer from this game. I'm choosing Marvin Burks, the safety. We talked to him afterwards. He gets his first career interception in this game. Theo Weiss was asked what has how Marvin Burks has improved, seeing him go up in practice, and he had a funny answer saying that the best thing that Marvin Burks did was changing his number to number one. Um, but Marvin Burks is really just an incredible utility piece for this defense. And I don't say that to minimize what role he could play, but it's more so just he's not your traditional free safety. He's moving all over the field, playing robber a little bit, playing close to the line of scrimmage. We saw him get that tackle for loss. I believe he was sent on a few quarterback pressures as well. So a strong game from Marvin Burks. Really excited to see how he can get involved in this one. Michael, who you picking for your
Yeah, you
stand-up performer?
spoiled the surprise. I'm going with, I'll switch over to the offensive side of the ball, go with Theo Weiss. Um, Marvin Burks was actually asked about Theo
Yeah.
Weiss, so kind of funny how that happened. And his answer was pretty simple. He just said he was a tough cover. He's versatile. He can get you on a deep ball, which he didn't have to do today because he was so immediately wide open on quick little routes. So he had a great performance tonight. Um, yeah, I mean, it was nice to see him kind of not necessarily step in because with Burden out, but just to see him, work with the ball in his hands and things like that. I think there was some slight concern about the beginning of the third quarter. He might have banged up his shoulder. We saw on the
Yeah.
SEC network broadcast that he was holding his shoulder. So there was some slight concern there. He came back in. Don't know. We don't really know if he was having any severe pain. Coach Drinkwitz didn't say anything. Theo didn't say anything. So it doesn't seem like there's any major area of concern there. But he did come back in later in the third quarter and have one of his biggest gains of the game. So kind of speaks to his toughness there. But yeah, I mean he did exactly what he needed to do. He was open in those quick routes and really worked well with the ball in his hands. And Brady Cook had a nice quote and kind of speaks to Weiss and the entire receiving core, and maybe his ability to read a defense. But if the quick routes are open and the short stuff is open, and you're going to get the ball to your playmakers, if they're pressing up on you and the deep ball is open, you go with the deep ball. And they didn't need the deep ball tonight, so that kind of opened up things for Weiss and other receivers to get a lot after the catch.
One last thing before we head out of here. We've talked so much about these past 2 weeks of what can we actually gain from Mizzou in these first 2 weeks of the season, at least, where they're going up against FCS Murray State, 51-point favorites or 48-point favorites in that one, going up as 34.5-point favorites against MAC team in Buffalo, with a new head coach finishing near the end of the MAC last year. So what we actually learned about the team in this one, it's a little bit more difficult to say compared to last week against Murray State. Uh, I guess my main takeaway would be this defense is pretty legit, and I talked out nauseam about it a little bit ago about the depth they have on there, the playmakers they have on there too. They not only have the guys that can get the dirty work done, especially in the trenches, but also have playmakers like Corey Flagg, like Marvin Burks, who can come away with big plays when you need it. Michael, what was one thing you learned about this Mizzou team tonight?
I mean, it's kind of hard to pinpoint something outside of the defense, right? That's really the big thing. If I'm getting a little more nitpicky, I'm gonna go with the ground game and the pair of running backs. Not that there was any doubt that they wouldn't perform, but they looked really consistent. They complemented each other well. Again, second week in a row. Wasn't necessarily as explosive as a performance from either of them, but they still had 60, 70 yards and 10 to 12 carries and that general range. So they both showed off their skill sets tonight. And then adding on to that, I mentioned Brady Cook earlier. He looked like he was in his element with the ball in his
Yep.
hands. Made good reads. He made excellent reads, especially going back to that longer touchdown. Drinkwitz mentioned maybe a less experienced quarterback would panic and throw the ball away. He knew that the hole was going to open up. He hit it and ran with it and front flipped into the end zone. So yeah, running game looks strong. Offensive line appears to be getting them holes as well. So they might be struggling on the penalty side, but the run game has been there. And I foresee that not being as easy against Boston College. They're ideally going to pose a little bit more of a threat, but at least to start, Carroll and Noel look very comfortable.
That'll do it for us from here at Farrell Field. Make sure you're tuned in to the rest of our coverage at Missouri on SI for post-game coverage from this one. Reactions we'll have coming out over the next few days, and then Buffalo or Boston College week pretty much starts on Tuesday when we hear from Coach Eli Drankowitz again. So make sure you stay tuned to it all. We appreciate you watching this one.